Welcome to Explorations. Today we're speaking with Sam Magill. Sam is an old friend and he's a photographer, a poet, a philosopher, a coach, and a coach supervisor, and has made a living of experiencing life firsthand and using stories and images to support leaders and coaches in their own journeys. In this last of a four-part interview, we explore how coaches can use their native story intelligence to enhance their work and how this knowledge can help them to flexibly change perspectives in order to gain deeper insight. So let's get to it.
They tend to be, yeah. All their problems melt away.
That's right. So, I've been mucking around here for a couple of years with this notion of story intelligence. And I'm wondering, a coach who understands the breadth of that concept, how could they use that to work with their clients and to read them better? And what would you say to a coach around this notion of story intelligence and how they could use it?
First thing is to know that there are stories, that we're making up stories as we go along. A story in the sense of the conversation I'm having with myself about the other person. So the first part of story intelligence for coaches, I think, is that they be aware that we are story makers. You've taught me that, Rick. We're story makers. And if we then get good at being able to name our story, maybe to write it down, like I did with that group of coaches this morning. I had them write down their story. I called it a play. And it revealed things to them. I've encountered people, including some coaches, who, if I asked them to write a play about their client, about themselves as a coach with a client, they wouldn't have a clue. They wouldn't know to do it. They can develop it, I'm pretty sure. And I think we develop it by paying attention to stories. I think reading stories, I think reading a line of poetry. Poetry says of reality that if it is magnificent, it is also stupid. What in the world is that about? Here's another stretch on story intelligence. A friend was visiting from Germany. And somehow we got on the topic of Rainer Maria Rilke, right? And I said, oh, I've got this really cool Rilke book. And on one page it's English, which I can read it. On the other side, it's the original German in which he wrote. And she looked at a favorite poem of hers. She knew Rilke really well. And she said, I feel really sad for you. I said, well, why? She said, because you're missing half the poem. The rhyming, the juiciness of the German words he's using, the structure, back to the structure of the poetry, is so evident in the German. And yeah, the sentiments are here in English, but it's not the same story. Story intelligence. I begin to translate my client's story and language into my own sensibilities. I may get a lot. It's just, I really have to pay attention. And I believe we can develop it over time.
Yeah, their words and the meaning of their words are crucial. And I think we often hear someone say something and we assume what it means, whereas there's a whole story to be unpacked in a sentence that they spoke that would not have been apparent if someone was just looking at it, the translation, in a sense, the way you described it. Mm.
You know, back to Picasso and the girl before the mirror. I was using that as an illustration one day, and someone said, yeah, but what was going on in Picasso's mind when he drew these somewhat tortured images? This actually is an image coming out of Picasso's head. Wow. So what was lost in translation there?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as an artist myself, I would have a very hard time explaining my images.
Yeah.
Because they're too intimate in a sense. There's so much that was going on when I was creating them. And you know what's so interesting is that when people see an image, they want to know what the title is. And there's for many years I've resisted putting titles on paintings because what they do is immediately go, I see it. Oh, okay, and then they can move on to the next image.
Right.
So I got the story, and I think what we do is we have a way of compartmentalizing and creating a shortcut for what we've just witnessed, so we can move on to the next thing. And maybe we really haven't seen it at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in that same conversation about Picasso, someone said, well, who gave it the title, The Girl Before a Mirror? And if we didn't have that line, what would we see? What would we be talking about? Because that takes you down a path.
Yeah, but that in some ways the title delimits maybe what people can see. They immediately put it into a story that they know. You know.
So, Rick, how do we delimit our clients by giving them labels and titles in our own mind?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. You know, yesterday, and I was talking to Terry Deal. He's actually in leadership programs. He's been having them read fiction,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that you spend time having the coaches that you supervise both read fiction and art, and you talk about sometimes maybe going to a museum. Um, and this kind of takes us back to the beginning of our conversation. What is it about art, whether it's poetry, painting, photography, that helps build a deeper sensibility in us so that we can be more effective if we're coaching someone else?
I think it's a practice field.
Hmm.
If I go to an art museum and I pay attention to what's happening in me, what I'm saying to myself, what I'm feeling as I look at a particular sculpture, or if I'm sitting in a ballet, or whatever it might be, if I get accustomed to noticing what's happening to me as I encounter this art, then I think I develop some muscle, if you will, for noticing what is happening in me when I encounter another person.
Hmm. So I love this notion of that you said a practice field. Is that the way you described
I
it?
did, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And in photography, of course, as you know, Rick, everything changes when we change lenses. Everything changes when we climb up a hill a little higher and the angle of the light is different on the landscape. Everything changes. And so by looking at art from different perspectives, we develop our capacity to change perspectives quickly. Rodin's great sculpture, The Kiss. I got to see his original casting of that in the Tuileries in Paris. And fortunately, I was able to be there probably early in the morning when there are not many folks around. And I brazenly climbed up on the plinth with my camera. And I almost got inside the Kiss. I held my camera right up in between the two bodies and shot away like mad, And then I went to the other side, and then I stood back. And then I just focused on their heads. And there's so many different ways. But if we're not practiced about saying, well, that's one perspective. How about if I go over here? Coaching client, take me into the heart of your work. Walk with me inside this manufacturing setting. Let me feel what you're feeling.
I have some deep, close friends. One used to be the head of the museum at Rollins College, and he and his wife have taught a course called Loving Art for many years. And they start off in a classroom. People come in. It's a 2-day class, and there's a painting on an easel that's covered, draped. It could be a landscape, it could be a classical portrait, whatever. It could be an abstract, something more recent, contemporary. And he uncovers it, and he goes, "Who likes this painting?" The number of hands go up. Who doesn't like it? Number of people, "Oh yeah, I can't stand landscapes," or "I can't stand these classical, portraits," whatever it is. And he'll invite one of the people who doesn't like the painting to come up, and he'll say, "Well, describe what you're seeing here." And they start to look closely at the painting and describing the detail. And what's interesting, there's a little swab of red right here. I don't even know what that is, but oh yeah, and she's got a little pattern painted on her dress. I couldn't see that from back there, And the next thing you know, they're seeing the painting for the first time.
That's right.
And that's why he calls this program Loving Art. They're suddenly able to open themselves to see it, not to be seeing it through the filter of a judgment they made a long time ago. And I think what you're describing is exactly that. How do you open coaches up to fully see the other?
And Rick, this takes me to one of my grumpy places about a lot of leadership coaching work. There's a very well-known leadership assessment. Answer a bunch of questions, other people answer a bunch of questions. You get a profile that says, this is the way you are. And for this particular client, anxiety was a real problem for him. So I said, well, what is going on with anxiety? It wasn't like, oh, you're anxious, you need to find a way to not be anxious. I said, I mean, right now, I don't experience any anxiety from you. You don't look anxious to me. What's this about? He said, well, in our organization, an employee can file a complaint against you with human resources, and a secret investigation will be done of you. And this could be happening right now, not just to me, but to anybody. And I said, yeah. And he said, I'm really anxious about that. Because if an investigation is done, even if you were found to be innocent, you're labeled. Oh, Bob had an investigation done on him. So I wanted to get inside. The label annoys me a little bit. Unless we take the time, just like the girl before the mirror, unless we take the time to get inside of it, we're stuck with something on the surface, and it gives us no leverage for change.
Powerful. Well, Sam, I was wondering, do you have your book of poetry handy?
Yeah, I do. Hang on, it's right over here.
I'm wondering if you would close out our time together with one of your favorite poems.
Okay, got it.
Great.
This is a poem called Earth Homework. And it came from, I was working with a classical acupuncturist who works with 5 elements of life. And she wanted me to get more earth, more grounded. So I was taking a trip to the Southwest for vacation. And she said, your job is to pay attention to the earth. Here's what happened. Look, underneath our hurriedness, the earth moves. Time is eons. Rock bends, folds back upon itself, washes clean in long flowing water. She was made before us, lies deep beneath the forest floor, bears all of us with sweet support. Linger here a very long time. See, she moves, grain by grain, washed away, set down again. Mountain becomes plain. Plain is cut to gorge. Sea floor rolls, folds, pushes, births mountains. Tired of your hurriedness? Go home, stay put. Earth will be there, still flowing like solid rock. If only we stayed still long enough to be so carved, settled down grain by unique small grain, and hardened by pressure long endured, yet soft enough to be formed by sacred water and wind, exposing our essence, then washed away in utter silence.
Thank you.
Welcome.
It's been a pleasure having you here on the show, and I think we could probably go on for another 2 hours.
That has been our habit, Rick, and filled with laughter. And
I'll only do that with a glass of wine with you. So, and
all right.
we're face to face.
When we're together again.
Thank you again, Sam, and to be continued.
Very good. All right. Stay well.